Good morning, Miss Pride. I'm just letting you know that I see that you're in the waiting room.
Okay.
So it'll be just a few minutes. I'm waiting for your attorney to get here, okay?
No worries. I'm gonna mute out then, love.
Yep. Did I somehow lose you? Did it disconnect you?
I did. I did because I'm sorry. I ended up clicking
No.
over
I'm just
because
making sure. I just wanted to make sure it wasn't me that did it because somehow I lost the judge also.
No worries. It's, technical difficulties, new age. Yeah.
All right. I'm gonna just mute yourself, and we're just waiting for your attorney. Thank you.
All right. Thank you so much.
You're welcome. Hey, Josh.
Hey.
Just waiting for the attorney. Miss Pride is already here.
Okay, great. Thanks.
Yep.
Yep.
Mr. Cross, you connected?
I am, Your Honor. Can you hear me?
I can, loud and clear. Good morning.
Morning.
Good morning, Mr. Kaplan. Fellas, why don't you put your appearances on the record for the People versus Pride?
Joshua Kaplan on behalf of the city of Romulus, Your Honor.
Joe Cross on behalf of Tamisha Pride.
And Ms. Pride, can you hear everybody loud and clear?
Unmute, Ms. Pride.
Looks like
her
she's-
audio's not connected.
Yes, she's not connected. She was earlier when she signed in. Let me chat her.
So while we're waiting for her to connect, why don't you guys tell me what the plea is so I can find the facts I need out of this incident report?
It'd be
My
a,
client plead to a no contest to charge. We're going to, Your Honor.
Okay, Mr. Cross, I heard no contest and then it kind of broke up. Let's try it again.
No contest to one other two counts.
Not working. Mr. Kaplan, why don't you explain it?
no contest to harassment, dismissal of the threats, and malicious use of communications.
Correct, Mr. Cross?
That is correct, Your Honor.
All right.
I just spoke to Miss Pride. She's gonna try to get her audio working.
Thank you.
She's on now, Judge.
Good morning, Ms. Pride.
Pride.
Ms. Pride, can you hear me?
We lost her.
Mr. Cross, if you want to try to get her on your speakerphone, we can probably do it that way.
I don't know if I can. I'm on my phone right now. I don't know if it'll
Okay. That's
do
all right.
both.
She's trying to get back in.
Miss Pride, can you hear us?
Let me see if I've got the correct phone number for her.
Miss Pride? I hear noise coming from her phone.
I can hear this phone.
All right, Ms. Pride, I'm calling you on my courtroom phone. You're on speaker, so let's see if the attorneys can hear you. Just state your name.
Tamisha Pride.
Gentlemen, can you hear Ms. Pride?
Yes, Your Honor.
Yes, I can.
Mr. Cross? Okay.
Yes, I
All right,
can,
Ms.
Your Honor.
Pride, I understand that you and Mr. Cross have decided to take a plea on the charge of harassment and the companion cases of malicious use of a telephone, threats, and another count of harassment would be dismissed. Is that your understanding of the plea agreement, ma'am?
Yes.
All right. And you've discussed your rights with Mr. Cross. You understand your rights and the options those rights give you?
Yes.
You understand that the charge of harassment carries a possible penalty of up to 93 days in jail, up to $500 fines plus court costs.
Yes.
Ms. Pride, you understand that if you plead no contest, in essence, what you're telling me is that you're not fighting the charge of harassment. If I can find a factual basis that supports a plea, then I don't have to hear anything from you, and I can accept that no contest plea, and we can go forward as if there was a guilty plea. In other words, there'll be a sentencing. You understand that?
Yes.
All right. Understanding all of that, are you pleading no contest to the charge of harassment from April 13, 2017?
Yes.
And are you doing so freely and voluntarily today, ma'am?
Yes.
And is it all right with you and Mr. Cross if I look at the police report to get my facts?
Yes.
Mr.
Yes,
Cross, no
sir.
problem?
No problem, Your Honor.
All right, I have read the incident report, and I do find a factual basis that supports a plea to harassment. I will dismiss all of the other charges in keeping with the plea agreement from the people. Ms. Pride, I've got your address on Robson Street. Is that still a valid address?
Yes, it is.
Thank you. Obviously, I've got the correct phone number. Mr. Cross, Mr. Kaplan, any reason not to sentence today?
No, sir.
We'd have no objection to immediate sentence on this, Your Honor.
All right. Anybody have anything I should consider before I do so?
I just want to let you know, Judge, that Miss Pry finishing up her master's, the father of her child that was at issue here is no longer with the victim. Things have changed. She's grown up a bit, and I'd ask for fines and costs. Thank you.
Okay. Ms. Pride, where are you finishing your master's and master's in what?
I'm finishing my master's in human resources at Walden University.
Good for you. All right. And how is your current relationship with your co-parent?
It is co-parenting very well.
All right.
We split 50-50 custody.
So you're civil with each other now?
We are.
Awesome. All right. Anything you want to tell me, ma'am, before I sentence you today?
In addition, our children, in terms of the victim, are friends and siblings. So I encourage a wholesome relationship all the way through because our
Good.
children are friends and siblings.
Yep.
In
They're
addition,
family. Yep.
I'm ready just to move forward and have this
Okay.
ready to be done.
And I'm glad you shared that with me because I'm happy to hear that. All right. Anything else, gentlemen?
No,
Nothing from the people, Your Honor.
All right, Ms. Pride, I think I already said this on the record. I'm dismissing all of the charges from April 19, 17, and 19, except the one charge of harassment. On that one, I am sentencing you to a total of fines and costs of $800. I'm not putting you on probation. I'm assuming I would have heard of it, gentlemen, if there'd been any further problems in the intervening couple of 3 years. Correct?
Correct, Your Honor. I believe that,
Yeah.
I believe there's been no further issues.
As far as I'm concerned, Ms. Pride, you've been on probation and we haven't had any further problems. So I just want to do fines and costs and close out. On the $800, I can give you a monthly payment plan, or I can just tell you to pay it all within 30 days, whatever works best for you.
For right now, I'm suffering from some major health issues.
Okay.
If I do come across another lump sum of money, I'll be more than happy to just go ahead and cash it out.
Okay, let's set up a monthly payment plan. We'll always take extra money and you can pay any amount early you want to. So what can you pay every month?
Right now, I do suffer from cancer and lupus. So if it would appease the court, the lowest payment, maybe $100 a month.
I can do 100. I can do lower than that. If 100 stretches you too much, let's go 75.
Okay, that would be, I appreciate that.
Like I said, you can always pay extra. Can you start that on or before the first Friday in January, which is January 7th?
Yes.
All right. Do you have any questions?
No.
Mr. Cross?
no.
We're all set, gentlemen. Thank you. Enjoy your day, people.
Thank you, Your Honor.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Cross.
Thank you.
All right, now we're waiting for the Sumter crew, right?
Yep.
Thank you.
Mr. Leffler? Nicholas,
Yes.
do you have video?
No, I'm trying to get it. It's not coming in.
Okay, because we're gonna have to have that.
Yeah, I'm trying to get it. It's not working for some reason.
Okay, did you want to?
Oh, there it
Oh, there you are. All right, I'm gonna mute you for right now till we're ready, okay?
Okay.
Thanks. Good morning, officer. Good
Morning, Your
Mr.
Honor.
Leffler, Mr. Young.
Your Honor, how are you?
Good. Mr. Leffler, you are muted. Try that.
Is it working?
There you go. All right. Is Mr. Day going to represent you today?
I'm assuming so. I haven't talked to him.
All right, you might want to give him a call. I'll put you on mute while you give him a call.
Okay.
I've got a Sumter question for you two.
Okay.
North side of Willow Road, west of Haggerty, next to the power line. Is that Sumter or is that Huron?
If it's next to Haggerty, it'll be Sumter.
So it's a west side or north side of Willow, west of Haggerty.
Yeah, that'll be Sumter. West of Haggerty is
Yep,
yep.
yep. There's 36 acres there with a for sale sign next
Yeah.
to the power line. That's
Yep.
Sumter.
Yep.
All right, Rob, I got a question for you then. My nephew's looking at that parcel and he's trying to figure out who owns the power line property, whether or not it's just an easement on the 36 acres and the parcel next to it, or if the power company actually owns that. Would the township have any records on that? And if so, who would I talk to?
Yeah, we probably would have records on that. I can check it out for you. Normally what happens is, and again, are these the big lines? You're talking about the ones that transfer it way down somewhere,
Yeah.
the tall ones?
Yeah.
All right, that's
Yeah, it's a
a
major power
independent
line.
company. Yeah, it's an independent company that usually what they get is easements, and the easements are not only for the installation, but they need it for vegetation control and access is what the big issues are. That's why you see those trucks out there. So I can
Yeah.
find out. I guess where's
Yeah, I
this at
appreciate it.
again?
It's it's north side of Willow, west of Haggerty, and the power lines are on the east side of the property. It's a 36
Right.
acre parcel. And I told my nephew probably what the deal is, if it's a 100-foot easement, that 36 acres probably has 50 foot of it, and the parcel on the other side of it probably has 50 foot of it, and then the power company just has an easement over it.
Yeah, if it's on the property line, that's probably the way it is. A lot of times, most of what I've seen goes through the middle of the property, which presents the problem.
Right.
There's restrictions as to what you can do, obviously. They're more concerned with vegetation than they are anything else, so.
Right. He's thinking if he buys it, he's just buying it for a place to play. So he wants to use the right of way as access to the back of his parcel. So he just wants to find out who owns it. If he owns it and they've got an easement on it, then he can he can go back and forth with his four-wheeler, whatever he wants to do.
Oh, yeah, no, there's about a 99% chance that the power company has an easement. They don't buy property normally. But I'll
if you
see
can
what
check
we
that out,
have
I'd
in
appreciate
the
it.
township.
Thanks, appreciate it.
Yep.
Mr. Leffler, you're still muted.
Yes,
There
sir.
you go. Did you get a hold of Mr. Day?
No, I called and it says that nobody's available to help me out.
Okay, when's the
Let me
last time you
try,
spoke to
let me
him?
try him on his cell.
Sure, go ahead.
What was that, sir?
I said, when was the last time you spoke to Mr. Day?
Last court date.
I think that was back in September, right?
Yeah.
Judge?
Yes, sir.
So I've got John on the phone. He miscued on the date, but he's only about 5 minutes from the office. So I just told him
That's
we'd
fine.
wait. Okay.
Yeah,
Yeah, that's fine.
if
no
it works
problem.
for you guys. Yep. So Mr. Leffler, tell me what to do with the hammer behind you.
It's a present that my daughter got me. It says, "Dad, thank you for helping us build our lives."
Cool. Very cool. I've got a friend of mine that has a tool wall, and he tries to collect tools from guys in his life that were important to him, you know, older guys, mentor type guys, that kind of thing. And he gets a tool from anybody he can get and stacks, throws that on his wall, puts their name on it, puts it on his wall. Kind of cool.
Awesome.
All right, I'll be back.
All right. September.
Good morning, Mr. Day.
Good morning, Your Honor.
All right, gentlemen, your appearances for the People versus Leffler, please.
Your Honor, John Day appearing on behalf of the defendant, Mr. Leffler.
Good morning.
Sorry, Your Honor, Robert Young on behalf of Sumter Township.
When are we ready to proceed with the trial?
Ready, Your Honor.
Ready, Your Honor.
Okay, Mr. Young.
Detective George Saligen, please.
Detective, raise your right hand for me, please. Excuse me. Do you swear or affirm to tell the truth, the whole truth, nothing but the truth today?
Swear to God.
Thank you.
You're
Go ahead, Mr.
George may I, Your Honor?
Yep, go ahead.
All right, you are George Sullivan. You're currently employed with the Sumter Township Police Department. You have been so for what, approximately 8 years? You currently hold the position of detective. That's all been on a full-time basis, is that right?
Correct.
And you are, aside from currently being involved in investigating certain matters as it relates to criminal activity, I'm talking about from an investigative standpoint as a detective. Prior to that time, you were a patrol officer
Correct.
and performed the duties that we all understand to be associated with that position for the most part. Is that right?
Yes.
All right, let me direct your attention, if I can, to June the 2nd, 2019, long time ago. But obviously, you know why you're here today, and you had cause or reason at that time, or on that date, I should say, to come into contact, maybe not physically or directly, but to come into contact with somebody that you thought you knew to be Nicholas Wayne Leffler. Is that right?
Yes.
Can you tell the court how that occurred, please?
On that date, I was dispatched to a house that is approximately right across the street from where Mr. Leffler lived. And while I was conducting my interview of, I believe it was a family trouble, I was conducting interviews in the driveway of this residence. And while conducting interviews, at first there was a dirt bike that started up and began driving up and down the roadway. And as it continued, I began to look at who was riding it. And as the dirt bike was going back and forth at a high rate of speed, doing wheelies, lifting the front end of the dirt bike up off the ground, I was able to observe that the operator of the dirt bike was Nick Leffler.
Let me stop you there. So this occurred where?
On Judd Road. The Sumter Road would be a main cross street. If you go west of Sumter on Judd Road, you come to Fenster Road. And then after Fenster, it was Bond Road. I was at a house. I was conducting an investigation at a house. I can't say exactly where the house was, but it was on the north side of Judd Road around Fenster, between Fenster and Bond, I believe.
This is Sumter Township, County of Wayne, State of Michigan. Is that right?
Yes.
And that road that you're talking about, was that a paved road, dirt road, gravel road? What kind of road?
It was paved.
All right. All right. And as you were investigating the matter across the street unrelated to Mr. Leffler, you were able, I think you said that you saw the bike or a bike going by, and you described what was happening with the bike. You could pick it up from there if you would. I didn't mean to interrupt you. I just want to make sure we stayed focused on where we're at. Go ahead.
Right. As the dirt bike was going back and forth, I was close enough to the roadway that I could observe the rider, Nicholas Leffler, with no helmet on. And from prior contacts with Mr. Leffler, I've identified the rider as Mr. Leffler. As I continued to conduct my investigation, Mr. Leffler parked the dirt bike and then proceeded to get on a four-wheeler, a quad, and essentially began doing the same thing up and down Judd Road, doing wheelies, burnouts of sort of a burnout. If you pop the clutch, spin the tires, whip the rear end around, stunts of that nature. And I couldn't clear my family trouble because of the nature of the family trouble. However, I stood toward the end of the driveway, viewing Judd Road, watching Mr. Leffler go back and forth, popping wheelies and doing burnouts on the
All right.
18.
Let me ask you if I can, please. How many times, if you know, roughly, did the bike that you described as being driven by Mr. Leffler go in front of you on Judd Road?
Just the dirt bike, or the dirt bike and the four-wheeler?
Either one. If you've got a collective recollection, that's fine. I mean,
Well, I'm not going to put a exact number on how many times they went back and forth, but it was multiple times that it crossed in front of me.
but I guess what I'm trying to understand is it didn't just fly by one time where you got a glimpse, but it was back and forth at least more than once.
More than once. I'd say at least 10 times one of the motor vehicles went in front of me, passed in front of me.
And what was the distance between where you were standing? You probably were standing in different locations, but at the closest that you were standing to Judd Road and the vehicle, what was that distance approximately, if you know?
Approximately, I'd say 20 yards, 30 yards, maybe.
Okay.
Did you have an opportunity to have a clear view of who you thought, or could you see who was driving that, both the bike and the quad, as you called it?
Absolutely.
And the quad is an ORV, and over the recreational vehicle for the most part?
Yeah. Yes.
Right. Four-wheeler, if you will?
Right.
All right. Any question at all in your mind that the person that you saw driving that vehicle was Mr. Leffler?
No question at all.
Either vehicles, I should say?
No question at all.
So that's pretty interesting that you can be there at a period of time looking at somebody that's driving by. You didn't make a stop, did you?
No, I did not. By the time I cleared the family trouble that I was on, both vehicles had been parked and Mr. Leffler had left his residence.
Did you try to make contact with Mr. Leffler at the residence?
Not on that day, no.
All right. And had you seen these vehicles before? Did these vehicles look familiar, or were they unfamiliar? What was your recollection?
So my recollection of the dirt bike was a blue dirt bike. It had blue plastics on it. And I have had contact with Mr. Leffler on a dirt bike with blue plastics on it before. To say that it was the same one, I can't honestly say that it was the same one. And with the four-wheeler, I can't say that I've seen him on that four-wheeler before.
Okay, so you don't, even though you indicated there was contact, there may not have been, you can't identify for sure that you had contact with those vehicles before, at least.
Correct.
All right. And now, without getting into detail, when you say you had contact with Mr. Leffler, can you give us any general idea as to what that means?
I've performed traffic stops on Mr. Leffler before. I've been to his house and police aid in the past.
All right. You know how many times roughly you have had contact with Mr. Leffler, say within a year or two before this incident, if you know?
I couldn't say, I couldn't put a number on it, but there was multiple times.
Is it fair to say that you have at least well, strike that. Is there any reason that you can recall that you would have had any difficulty with Mr. Leffler prior to this date regarding any matter?
When you say difficulty, what do you mean? I mean, he's never really, I've never had a difficult time with him. Like I said, I have stopped him on before and issued him a citation then. And it wasn't a matter of fighting or anything like that. You know, it was, hey, look, you're doing this, here's your citation. And, we went on our separate ways.
All right, so you don't have any animosity that you can reflect today if you're questioned about that as it relates to Mr. Leffler for any reason?
No, I have no issue with Nick Leffler.
All right, going back, and I'm almost finished, going back to what you witnessed. So you indicated that the bike and the quad went back and forth a number of times. Can you be more specific as to exactly, again, what you saw the bike doing?
Excuse me. So as I was conducting my investigation across the street from where Mr. Leffler resides, a dirt bike came out onto the paved roadway, Judd Road, and it would stop, it would go, it would pop a wheelie, lifting the front wheel of the motorcycle off the ground, and he would travel down the roadway. He would go down, and then he would come, and I would see him just going at I would say above the posted 35-mile-an-hour speed limit, riding the wheelie up in the air. I was on the dirt bike. On the quad, he would do the same thing. He sat in the middle of the roadway of Judd Road and hold the clutch in, increase the RPMs, and then if you let the clutch go, it would cause the tires to spin. He would spin the tires and whip the rear end of the motorcycle, the four-wheeler, the quad, around, not necessarily doing a donut, but it would rapidly whip the rear end of the four-wheeler around. And there was an instance where he didn't whip it around, but he popped it up to where there's a bar on the back of said ATV that it scraped the ground. It was so vertical, straight up in the air. And then that was.
I'm sorry, go ahead.
There.
Anything else you want to, okay. The last question is, did either vehicle ever come to a stop in front of you during this time?
It did. It stopped in the middle of the roadway, approximately 20 to 30 yards away from me. The clutch would be held, the RPMs would rev, and then the clutch would be released, causing the tires to spin, and it would whip around. He was stopped when that happened, and then he would take off down the road, whichever way he was oriented. And then, like I said, he stopped in the middle of the roadway and did a similar maneuver where he just popped the clutch and popped a wheelie to where the grab bar, the rear bumper, whatever you want to call it, scraped the paved roadway. And all this was done right in front of me.
Any obstruction at any time of your view of Mr. Leffler, or who was driving or operating any of those, either of those two vehicles?
From the position I was in, there were moments where I would lose sight of the dirt bike or four-wheeler due to how far it was traveling in both directions. However, I was standing in a driveway that I could view out to the road with a clear picture, and I observed Nick Leffler riding both motor vehicles.
All right, nothing further, Your Honor. Thank you.
Your witness.
Thank you, Your Honor. Detective Salinger, let's go back again. This was on again, June the 2nd night of 2019. Is that correct?
Yes.
What time of day?
The exact time of day I couldn't be for certain, but I know it was towards the end of my day shift, which ends at 5 p.m. So my assumption, a guesstimate is all it would be around 4 p.m. Is that when this would be happening?
And you were at a call for a domestic problem?
Family issue. It was, if I recall correctly, regarding this investigation, it was a family member that was having, I don't know if I want to call it a manic episode, but they were having a breakdown of sort that police were called to the scene.
Were you the only officer on the scene?
What's that?
Were you the only officer on the scene?
No, I was not.
Who else was there?
Officer Ken Tony.
And where was this individual who was the cause of your being there?
The individual was the interview. When I spoke with the individual, she was standing just outside the house.
Front door, side door, back door?
So how their house is set up, they have multiple entrances. I believe it's depending on who's coming home, but it was on the driveway comes to the east side of the residence, I believe, and we were standing next to the house on the east side of the residence. And there's an entry into the house. I'm not sure if this individual uses that entrance, but there was a door into the house on the east side there.
Person inside the house or outside the house?
I was outside the house.
You were. Where was the individual?
I interviewed multiple individuals on this.
I'm trying to find out if you were talking through a screen door or if they're out there standing with you.
We were both outside. Everyone I spoke to my recollection, was outside. And I know the individual, there's a time where the individual was standing outside when I interviewed him.
And where was the other officer who was with you?
He was next to me. He was speaking with other individuals. He was assisting me on my investigation.
How many people would be in that vicinity? Other than the officers?
Other than the officers, without reviewing that other investigation, I can't say exactly how many people I interviewed. I do believe that there were, I believe that there was 3 people that I interviewed.
And domestic situations are potentially dangerous. Is that not true?
Potentially, yes.
So you pay a great deal of attention to what you're doing when you're watching these people, to watch not only the person you're interviewing, but also other people in the area. Would that be correct?
Correct. I pay attention to all the people in the area, yes.
How far does this house sit back from the road?
I don't have exact, my guess would be 35, 40 yards.
That would be 120 feet.
Correct. At 40 yards.
So you are roughly more than 120 feet, give or take, if you're along the side of the house, and the house is 120
Correct.
feet back, correct?
At certain points I was next to the house, yes.
Well, were you next to the house all the time?
No, I did not. So on domestic situations, usually you try and separate involved individuals. So there were, where our police cars was a little bit parked back, like towards like the middle of the driveway. And we had two patrol vehicles there. And I know there's interviews conducted next to the house, next to a patrol vehicle during this investigation.
So between you at times and the street would be 2 patrol vehicles parked in the driveway?
Correct.
Were they parked alongside each other? Were they parked front to front or front to back?
Front to back, yeah.
Have the lights on?
No. I don't believe they had the lights on. Usually in domestic situations, when we get there, yeah, I don't recall for sure. I mean, usually my standard is I wouldn't have lights on when I pull into a domestic situation.
Trying to get the setting.
Sure.
So when you were alongside the house, or did you ever interview anybody in the car?
Was I ever inside my vehicle?
Did you ever interview anybody inside the patrol car? Patrol situation.
I don't believe so. All situations are different. When I arrived on this scene, it wasn't a situation that I deemed to be so hostile that I had to secure someone in my police car. So all interviews were conducted. No one was put in a police car or handcuffed for safety or anything.
Is that from direct memory, or is that what you think you did?
What was that?
specifically recall that, or are you just thinking that's?
Well,
what
like
you
I
did?
said, I'm referencing how I usually handle a situation.
You're
This
talking about
event-
your policy. You're not talking about what you actually did that day.
Well, as I said, I don't recall 2 years ago what I did on a family trouble. I don't
Fair enough.
recall. Yeah.
So how close then at some point you saw was it the dirt bike that went by first or the four-wheeler?
I do believe the dirt bike was on the road first.
At some point, a dirt bike drove in front of the property first. Is that correct?
Correct.
And you were in the middle of doing interviews
Correct.
and watching the situation.
Correct.
And you were at least 120 feet from that dirt bike at its closest pass. Is that correct? That's when it's directly at the end of the driveway?
Well, from standing by the house, yes. However, my position didn't stay at the house.
Okay, where else were you?
Well, when I had the situation under control and matters calmed down and I was conducting interviews and a dirt bike was going up and down, and I could see from where I was wheelies going by. And in my mind, I was like, well, what's going on out here? So I walked to approximately 30 yards to the roadway and I saw Nick Leffler on a dirt bike.
You walked 30 yards. Are you saying you walked all the way to the end of the driveway?
Within 30 yards of the roadway. No, I didn't engage. I didn't walk to the roadway, engage Mr. Leffler. I didn't. I walked to the fact where I said, that's Nick Leffler riding on that dirt bike. And I continued my investigation.
But you don't know what color that motorcycle was. Is that correct?
No, it had blue plastics on it. I said that I couldn't go if I went to Mr. Leffler's house now and there was 2 dirt bikes there and they were both blue in color, I wouldn't be able to determine them apart. But I said the bike that I did see had blue plastics on it. And
you saw a blue motorcycle.
I mean, it has multiple colors on it, but I said the blue stood out.
What was the closest that you came to the rider of the motorcycle?
The closest would probably be 20 yards.
Feet.
What's that?
60 feet.
60 feet, yeah.
Are there any other shrubs or obstructions along the front yard of this property?
Well, as I already testified, on the sides, correct. But there's a clear shot down the driveway that there's no obstructions. It's a driveway.
How wide is that driveway?
I don't know. I can't recall how wide it was or how wide the opening was to the roadway. I'm not going to say a number and be wrong.
When you saw this motorcycle with the driver go by the driveway, was he looking forward where he was driving?
At times, yes. He appeared to be paying attention to what he was doing. Yeah.
See him in profile at best.
I mean, yeah, sure. I mean, like I said, when I was viewing him, the four-wheeler made, I had
We're still talking about the motorcycle. We'll get to the four-wheeler.
Oh, on the dirt bike. Sure. Yeah. I'd say a profile at an angle, so it's not just a profile.
Driveway is probably not much more than 20 feet?
I'm not sure.
And you're seeing him over top of the patrol cars?
No, as I testified, I maneuvered toward the roadway, which I would have been on the road side of the patrol cars. So then I moved to where the patrol cars were in between myself and the house.
So you walked to the back of the back patrol car?
Yes.
Did you have anybody with you when you walked back there?
I believe Officer Cantoni was with me. And I believe one of our interviews were conducted at the second patrol car, to where there was someone that we were interviewing at the rear too, but I
Remember who you were interviewing at that time?
don't.
How many passes did he make? Was this motorcycle go past you?
Like I said, I'm not 100% sure. It was more than one, and I said possibly 10 between both of them. So there was, I mean, it was back and forth enough to where I was like, why is this happening? And I went to see what was going on, and I saw Nick Leffler riding the motorcycle.
When you went out there, was there any other traffic in the vicinity?
Yes, there was.
You haven't described any other traffic.
What's that?
You haven't described any other traffic. Can you tell me how much traffic was out there?
I mean, there wasn't much traffic. Like I said, it was later in the day. Traffic was probably a little bit higher than normal right there on Judd Road. You know, it's not a huge traffic area, but there were cars that went by while he was doing these acts.
Did you see him? Sorry, well, did you see the rider of the motorcycle perform any wheelies or any that type of conduct in the vicinity of other traffic?
Yes.
How close?
How close is the traffic?
Yes.
I'm not sure. I believe what was going on is that a car was probably doing the posted 35-mile-per-hour speed limit, and then the dirt bike would come by, and then I would see the car going slowly behind once the motorcycle passed.
The motorcycle passing the traffic going in the same direction?
Both.
Or
There's traffic going both ways, and I can only, and the motorcycle was going both ways.
I'm trying to find out is when it was traffic, were they intersecting, or was he following or passing that traffic?
Yeah, I'm not sure what he did when it comes to passing the traffic.
So at some point in time, the motorcycle no longer was going in front of this location, and then you said a four-wheeler started going through the location. Is that correct?
Correct.
How long between those two was there?
I don't know. It wasn't long. It wasn't long at all. But I'm not going to put a 5-minute mark on it because I'm not certain.
You know where Mr. Leffler lives?
So I know the area where he lives, and I know I've been to his house before, but if I'm correct, I believe since my employment with Sumter Township, he's lived in 2 different houses in that same area. I'm not 100% sure, but I thought he's had 2 different places. But
Did you see where the motorcycle originally came from?
No, I did not.
Did you see where the motorcycle went?
No.
So you cannot say that you ever saw that motorcycle pulling out of or going back to Mr. Leffler's property. Is that correct?
Correct. I didn't watch him pull out or pull in.
So all you saw was the vehicle driving past doing wheelies. Is that correct?
With
a blue motorcycle.
With Nicholas Leffler on it. Yes.
I understand that point.
Right.
And then at some point later on, you don't know how long, a four-wheeler started to come by.
It was a short period of time. Yes.
And what color was that? Oh, I forgot. You don't recall. Is that correct?
Well, again, I testified that I couldn't go to his house, and if there was 2 similar four-wheelers sitting next to each other, I couldn't say.
No, I'm asking you the color of the vehicle you
observed.
It
was mainly a whitish ATV.
Okay, so you recall now a white ATV.
Well, I never said I didn't recall.
I think you did the first time you testified, but that's okay.
Sure, but yeah, it was white-ish.
All right. And how many times did that pass by?
I don't have an exact number. I'll reference back to my 10 between the two vehicles. And I mean, that's probably on the low side, but I'm not sure. I didn't count.
Uh, the last time this vehicle passed, do you know which direction it was going?
I don't, because as we discussed, I was also doing in another investigation. So to where it actually stopped, I don't know if it went east and then went back home, or went west, then passed and went back home.
Good question. Is there a possibility that there was more than 2 blue motorcycles that you saw go by?
I guess it's possible, but I only observed one operator of the blue motorcycle I observed.
I understand that.
Right.
And you don't know where either the motorcycle or the quad wheeler originated from in terms of which property, and you don't know which one it returned to. Is that correct?
Correct.
But you did believe that Nicholas was the one driving those vehicles. Is that correct?
Correct.
How long were you at the scene of this domestic dispute?
I don't know for sure. I don't know.
Through your dispatch system, I'm assuming, or your computers in your cars, would you be capable of securing Nicholas Leffler's address?
I mean, yeah, I would be able to find his registered address through Secretary of State. Yes.
Yes. And you believe that he was recklessly driving on that day. Is that correct?
I do believe so. Yes.
Okay. After you left the scene, did you go to his house?
No, I did not.
When was the next time you were at his house?
I don't have a date for you, but I can't remember what came first. Because I know I had contact where I stopped by after I seen him riding his motorcycle down the road, and I said, "Hey, you don't have a cycle endorsement, so you shouldn't be riding down the road. If I see you again, I'm going to pull you over." He was already in his driveway. So I don't know if that came first or the time where I had to reissue a citation to him.
After this incident, you wrote a citation to him?
Yes.
And how was that citation delivered?
So I do believe there was some confusion when I issued the citation, which is a misdemeanor citation. I believe I marked the wrong box, so it didn't do what I was supposed to do. I don't know the ins and outs of that part of citations.
Well, we'll come back to that in a second. The question I asked you though is, how was that citation delivered to Mr. Leffler?
The original one wasn't. Misdemeanor citations can notifications will come in through the mail.
Okay, so do you recall mailing that to Mr. Leffler?
It's not a mailing that I would do. Once a misdemeanor, to my knowledge, once a misdemeanor is into the system, a court thing would have been sent out to notify.
You issued a citation, is that correct?
Yes.
You write the citation?
Yes.
And then what do you do with the citation after you write the citation?
In this situation?
Yes.
In this situation, I click the submit button and it submits it starts the process of
So
notification.
you actually never had any physical contact with Mr. Leffler personally, face to face, on that day or any day thereafter until after your citation was dismissed. Is that correct?
I believe so. Okay. Like I said, I know there's an instance where I thought I was giving him a cordial warning, saying, hey, you don't have a cycle endorsement. I don't know if that was after that or before this incident. So it's possible that when I was reissuing the citation was the first contact after he was riding on the roadway.
Your citation was dismissed, is that correct?
I'm not exactly sure what happened with the citation, but I know there was a problem with it.
If the court records reveal that it was dismissed, would you disagree with that?
No, I wouldn't. I mean, if the court records show that it happened, I assumed it happened.
And the reason that you reissued it was because it was dismissed, is that correct?
I'm not 100% sure. I just know that there is an error, and which I believe
Let me ask you this, how did you know to reissue the citation?
I was told to by one of my supervisors.
Supervisor was that?
2 years ago, I don't recall.
And you rewrote the citation, is that correct?
Yes.
And then did you just push send again?
No, that time I actually hand delivered it to Nicholas.
Why did you hand deliver that time and didn't hand deliver the first time?
I'm not sure. Because maybe I feel as though there is probably a little communication error, some miscommunication. So I figured it would probably be more clear if I hand delivered it.
You went to Mr. Leffler's house that day.
Yes.
And did he come out?
Yeah, I can't believe if he was already out doing work there or if he actually came out of the house. I can't. I made contact with him in the driveway.
Did you talk to him?
Yeah.
Did you ever see the blue motorcycle or the what's now described as the white four-wheeler on his property?
I don't recall.
While you were there, now this was I believe in August, is that correct, or September? 19?
Sounds, if the records show that, then that's what it was. I don't, again, it was a while ago. I don't really remember.
Who else was present, if anyone, when you spoke to Mr. Leffler that day?
That was buddy Michael Harnish showed up, which is a neighbor.
The neighbor came over?
Yeah.
And did you talk to the neighbor?
I didn't actually like talk to him. I mean, he came up and engaged in our conversation that I was having with Mr. Leffler. Yeah.
And did he say anything of pertinence to what happened on July or June the 2nd?
Pertinence to me? No, I don't think so.
No, did he say, I don't care what was pertinent to you. Did he say anything was pertinent or even relevant, or was it even discussed?
Well, what was that? Or was he what?
Was June the 2nd discussed at all?
Well, that's what I was there to discuss, was June 2nd. I was reissuing the citation.
Did the neighbor add anything to that conversation?
Yeah, he tried to tell me that it was him that was riding on the motorcycle and doing the reckless driving.
And that was just absolutely not relevant to you?
No, it wasn't. It wasn't relevant to me because I know Mr. Leffler and I know Mr. Harnish. I've had contact with both of them. And as far as I was concerned on that day, that Mr. Harnish was making a joke, because to me, I could look from 30 yards and say, that's Mr. Harnish and that's Mr. Leffler.
Do you have motorcycles?
What's that?
Does Mr. Harnish have motorcycles?
I do believe we've had contact with him on motorcycles, and I'm pretty sure I've given him a citation for ATV on roadway as well.
And does he have a four-wheeler?
I'm not 100% certain if he has a four-wheeler or not.
Does he have a blue motorcycle?
I'm not sure.
When, as a police officer, as a detective, you're doing an interview,
Mm-hmm.
Is it important to take witness statements?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
And whether you believe the witness statement or not, you would still record that and make that part of your file, would you not?
I mean, I could have, but And
No, I didn't ask you which, no, I'm asking you as practice and procedure.
A witness to the event, sure.
Okay.
To
So
something, yes.
if I came up and said I was there and I rode the motorcycle, whether you believe me or not, shouldn't that be documented?
Sure, it could have been
But it
documented.
wasn't.
Correct, it wasn't.
Because you believed it was Mr. Leffler.
Yes. If it was Mr. Harnish, I would have wrote Mr. Harnish a citation.
Well, if you believe it. That doesn't necessarily mean it wasn't Mr. Harnish, because why would he come up and confess to a police officer that it was him if it wasn't him?
Well, that's what I said. I thought he was joking because it clearly wasn't him.
Appeared to be joking to you?
What's that?
Did he appear to be, was he laughing?
Well, I mean, people don't always laugh when they make jokes, but the statement that was so outlandish, I considered it a joke.
Well, talking about outlandish, with 2 squad cars and police officers standing in the front yard of this property, wouldn't it be pretty outlandish to be putting on the kind of show you're describing that was going on?
Well, I mean, if officers if they're tied up on something and they're unable to clear, I mean, essentially you're untouchable. You
have a radio, don't you?
Whatever. What's that?
You're not the only 2 police officers in Sumter Township, are you?
Oh, we were. We
the
usually
only 2
run.
police. And
Yes,
the guy
sir.
on the motorcycle would know that.
I mean, if you live in Sumter Township for a long period of time, I mean, we all only run 2 cars normally. I mean, recently we've been more staffed and try to get 3 on the road, but it's the norm to have 2 cars.
I have nothing further, Your Honor.
Young, any further questions for Detective Salicone?
Brief redirect. So for purposes of clearing up something I failed to ask originally, I know you referred to Mr. Leffler a number of times. Mr. Leffler can be identified. He's appearing on the Zoom hearing. Is that right, Mr. Saligen?
Yes.
And the individual identified as Nicholas Leffler, was that the one you saw on the motorcycle, operating the motorcycle in the ATF that day that we were talking about?
The ATV, yes, sir.
And were you able to have, it sounds to me like you had multiple opportunities to confirm what the person, or at least the identity, or you had a good look a number of times on who was operating both the motorcycle and also the 4-wheeler. Is that right?
Correct.
And when Mr. Harnish came up to you, do you have any idea how it was that Mr. Harnish would even know that you were at Mr. Leffler's house talking about an incident that he felt compelled to confess to? I mean, how did that happen? Do you know?
Well, I'm not certain if they're like house to house neighbors, but I know they live right in the same vicinity.
Did you call Mr. Harnish to tell him to come over?
No, I didn't. No.
Did you know did Mr. Leffler in your presence call Mr. Harnish and tell him to come over?
No.
When Mr. Harnish arrived on the scene, did he immediately start talking about the fact that it was he that was driving those vehicles?
Yeah. He walked up and he probably heard what we were talking about, and he said that, how could I issue a citation to Nick Leffler when he was the one riding?
Interjected into your conversation a police officer with Mr. Leffler and felt compelled to confess to maybe not a major crime, but to confess to some civil infraction or misdemeanor, just out of the blue. Is that what he did?
Correct. Yes, that's what he did.
All right, nothing further. Thank you, Aaron.
Day. Any recross, Mr. Day?
No, Your Honor.
Prosecution rest, Your Honor.
Thank you, Detective.
Thank you, Your Honor.
Mr. Day, any defense?
Yes, Your Honor. Would call Nicholas Leffler.
Raise your right hand. Do you swear or affirm, tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth today?
Yes, sir.
Go ahead, Mr. Day.
Please state your name for the record.
Nicholas Leffler.
And Mr. Leffler, you've heard the testimony of the officer today. Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
Do you know Officer Saligen?
Yes, sir.
Have you had prior contacts with Officer Saligen?
Yes, sir.
Can you describe to the court the nature of the contacts you've had with Officer Salagen in the past?
From sitting in front of my house to pulling in my driveway when I'm not home, me getting phone calls, me coming to my house and dealing with him. He pulled in one day when I was riding a street legal enduro and told me that I didn't have an endorsement. But I don't know how he would know that without running my name. If I wasn't on the road, why is he running my name? That would be labeled as like harassment to me. He's pulled me over in my car. It was a toss up between him and Balowski for a while sitting in front of my house.
Do you feel that you were being harassed by them?
Yes. I got multiple pictures of cops sitting in front of my house directly across the street from me. When I open my door, there's a squad car sitting there. I got multiple
Do
pictures.
you have any reason why this might be the case?
What's that?
Do you have any reason why this might be the case?
Not sure.
Going to June the 2nd of 2019 at around 5 o'clock, were you riding a white, a blue motorcycle?
No, sir.
We're not on, was it Judd Road at any time that during that time period?
No, sir.
Were you riding a white quad runner?
No, sir.
You were in your home on August of 19. Was there a time when Officer Salinger came by?
August 28th?
Yeah.
No, I wasn't here. I was around the corner at my father's house. I got a phone call that there was a police officer in my driveway that wanted to speak to me. I come here. When I come here, it was Officer Salinger sitting in the car. He reissued me a citation for what was going on June 2nd that was dismissed the day prior to him reissuing me a ticket.
At some point, did a neighbor come by?
Yes.
Explain to the court what happened during that conversation.
When I was talking to Mr. Salagen about the citation being reissued and asking him why it was being reissued if it was just thrown out the day prior, Michael Harnish did walk up and was talking to Mr. Salagen and openly admitted to him riding a dirt bike and a four-wheeler. I take that back. He said, I was riding the four-wheeler and the dirt bike. And Salagen said it was a dirt bike that went down the road first, not the four-wheeler. And he said that it doesn't matter which way it occurred, that it was him that did it. And Salagen argued with him about him being the one that did it or not.
Your Honor, I'm going to object. This is hearsay. I am very patient. I believe defendants have a right to put on a defense. As you know, I don't interject normally. And I know that this matter was open with Mr. Salagen, Detective Salagen. I didn't object at that time. Again, Mr. Day has a right to press and to challenge witnesses in this case, and I certainly support that. But if Mr. Harnish is going to testify, then we will have an opportunity to hear it firsthand. I understand that he was there. We all understand that. But if Mr. Lepper is going to describe now some litany or some detail as to what's happening, that's hearsay in my world. I don't have an opportunity to cross-examine the person that supposedly made those statements. So I placed an objection on the record in that regard.
Your Honor, that has already been opened up by the prosecution's witness when he testified to the nature of the conversation, the content of the conversation, also testified he didn't believe it and believed it was being done unjust. I believe my client can testify as to what he observed, whether or not he found that testimony credible, and let the court make a decision based upon the two observers. The prosecution is well aware that we cannot call this gentleman in and have him testify without him basically impairing his own constitutional rights not to be a witness against himself. So he can declare immunity, and this is the only way that we can get this vital information that apparently the officer didn't think sufficient enough to even make a report on.
Well, the issue on the hearsay objection is not whether Mr. Saligen made the report or not, and I don't believe Mr. Harnish has any concern about confessing. I mean, he did that to an officer, and if Mr. Harnish, if there's a long story here to somehow talk about this was all created by Mr. Saligen and Mr. Belowski and the Sumter Township Police Department, it's going to take more than Mr. Leffler making these comments. So that's where I stand on this, Your Honor. I can't hear the court. I'm sorry.
You made a hearsay objection. I'm asking Mr. Day what the exemption would be.
Your Honor, we're not introducing this necessarily for the proof of the matter asserted, but we are using it, I think, to, if nothing else, raise questions to the credibility of the police officer who's testified. This entire case, the only thing that he seems to have any sense of certainty about is that it was Mr. Leffler that was on these bikes. He doesn't remember the colors necessarily. He doesn't remember how many times they went past. He doesn't remember if there was traffic. He doesn't remember exactly how close he was. He doesn't remember. None of this he remembers, Your Honor. But the one thing he does remember is the one thing that this testimony, and he even admitted, calls in question. And secondly, when it was called in question by a person who came up and volunteered the information, he didn't even bother to put it in the police report. I suggest this goes to his credibility and therefore should be admitted.
Okay, so let's get back. Your exemption was because Mr. Harnish's statements are not being admitted to prove the truth of the statement, correct?
Right. This is going to be basically the mindset and the credibility of the officer's testimony when there was other information that he chose to exclude in somehow defending the only factual item in this entire soliloquy that he seems to be definite about.
Okay, well, given the fact that he wasn't investigating, the investigation was already over, he was just reissuing the citation. I don't think his credibility on his fact that he didn't put anything in the report when he was investigating is moot. I think this is hearsay. I don't think it meets exemption. I'm not going to allow it. Let's move on.
Thank you, Your Honor.
Thank you, Your Honor.
Any further questions?
Yeah, I was just waiting for counsel to return.
I apologize. I'm having a hard time here in the court. So I had a heater going over in the corner, so I just shut it off. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
Mr. Leffler,
Yes, sir.
did the officer ever ask you whether or not you owned a blue motorcycle or rode a blue motorcycle?
Did he ever ask me? Is that what you said?
Yeah.
No. No, he has never asked me if I owned it or anything along those lines.
And do you?
No, I do not.
Okay. And how about a white ATV?
No, I do not.
I have nothing further, Your Honor.
Questions for Mr. Leffler?
Couple of questions. Mr. Leffler, did you speak with Mr. Harnish before coming to court today?
No, I have not.
Did you ask him to attend on your behalf as a witness and explain to the court that which he allegedly told Detective Saligen on the day in front of your house?
Objection on this line of questioning. You've already ruled that counsel has had that testimony as hearsay, and now he's wanting to go into it further.
I'm not asking about what he said. I asked if he asked Mr. Harnish to attend.
My turn. He's questioning why Mr. Harnish isn't here to testify directly, which would avoid any hearsay. I think that's a legitimate line of questioning for Mr. Young to ask Mr. Leffler. Proceed.
Okay.
Mr. Harnish, did you understand excuse me, Mr. Leffler, did you understand the question?
Can you repeat it, sir?
Did you contact Mr. Harnish before today asking him to appear as a witness on your behalf to explain the conversation he had with Detective Saligen?
No, sir.
Did you bring any pictures with you today reflecting all of the times the police officers are sitting in front of your house?
They're on my phone.
I have nothing further, Your Honor.
anything else for Mr. Leffler?
Nothing, Your Honor.
All right, any other defense witnesses, Mr. Day?
No, Your Honor.
Mr. Young, any rebuttal?
No rebuttal, Your Honor.
I'm ready for argument.
Briefly, Your Honor, I believe the courts had the benefit of listening to the testimony. It comes down to, unfortunately, at times, who is credible and what the motivation would be. Detective Saligen was emphatic, multiple opportunities to see who was operating those two vehicles, had prior contact with Mr. Leffler, dealt with him both in a positive way and in a negative way for periods of time before that. He was challenged on his recollection. I point out to the court there were a number of times when Detective Saligen indicated he didn't know, referencing that, yeah, he could have done better as it relates to a couple matters regarding the policy procedures or whatever the investigative techniques might be. I find Detective Saligen, at least from an arguable standpoint, is very credible. And it appears to me that when he testified, he was basically trying to indicate to the court that what he saw on the date that this incident occurred and what he believed to be the person operating that vehicle, and provided the court with background in that regard. We then get to Nicholas Leffler. He would have come in and basically said, look, I didn't do this, false ID or mistaken ID. We understand that that can happen from time to time, but that wasn't the motivation by Mr. Leffler. What he wanted to do is take the opportunity to demonize the Sumter Township Police Department, that somehow this is some motivation on their part to cause him harm. They sit across the street. Sergeant Pulowski and Detective Saligen team up and cause problems to him. We hear that all the time. And you know who I hear that from, Your Honor? I hear that from those that commit these kind of crimes. I rarely get somebody who hasn't and then complain repeatedly. We've heard this before, repeatedly, that it's the Sumter Township Police Department's fault and not the defendant or the person operating or conducting.
Your Honor, I'm going to object this line of argument. It sounds like counsel's testifying.
I am testifying. I'm testifying on an argument that I understood, or I'm drawing my conclusions. The court can disregard it if it wants, but I submit to the court that based upon the testimony of Detective Saligen, the ID is solid, it's strong. We have a lot of cases where IDs are the issue, and I'll take this kind of testimony any day of the week. He admitted again that he didn't see certain things, but he was pretty certain, or very certain, I should say, as to who was operating that vehicle. I leave it up to the court to decide. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Day.
Yes, Your Honor. The court, basically, as the prosecution admitted, this case comes down to a question of credibility and ID. I asked, as did the prosecution, Officer Saliger, a large number of questions about the events and surroundings that happened on June the 2nd of 2019. I think of the court reflects the answers that were received. Nearly almost every question that was asked of him about where he was, what he did, how many people he saw, the vast majority of those he hedged and indicated he didn't recall. He couldn't recall specifics about how far the house was. He describes with one hand, he's watching this thing going up and down the road, but then he says he's got a relatively narrow view down the driveway. He says he recognizes the client, but then he admits that he really only got a profile as the car was going by at allegedly the vehicle was going by at a high rate of speed. The only thing, ironically, that he seems to be absolutely dead certain and convinced of is that this was Mr. Leffler. Mr. Leffler has testified that he's had run-ins with Officer Saligen. He believes that there's a bit of an issue that's going on between the two of them. That would be a motive of sorts. I find it very interesting that when he came out the day after this case was dismissed by the court and personally reissues a citation, when the last time all he did was go back to the office and fill out a computer form. He didn't do an investigation, Your Honor. He never came to the house. He never looked for the motorcycles. He never interviewed my client. He just basically went to the station and put his name on a piece of paper and sent it to the court by email. When that got dismissed, Then he came back out, but when he was out, he never did an investigation to find out if there's anything, any way that collaborated what he said. And the one thing that did pop up that day was when the neighbor came over and said, that wasn't that wasn't Mr. Hart, excuse me, that wasn't my client, that was me. He didn't even bother to write that down, Your Honor. He never made a report. He never even mentioned it. I think my client has testified. He had no blue motorcycle. He has no white ATV. There's absolutely nothing in this story that in any way collaborates what's going on. The prosecution has a burden in this kind of a case to show up beyond a reasonable doubt. It's a misdemeanor case. And in this situation, I think there's more than adequate reasonable doubt as to what happened in this case, and some question about Mr. Saliger's motives when someone comes up, says you got the wrong guy, and he doesn't even bother to make a notation in that regard. Your Honor, we're asking that the court find that my client is not guilty of reckless driving.
Mr. Young.
I don't have anything else to add, Your Honor. I believe the court's had the benefit of facts, the argument, so I will leave it to the court.
Thank you, gentlemen. Mr. Day, you have a much different take on the detective's testimony than I do. I found it to be credible. I don't think he should have been making any notes at the time he was talking to Mr. Harnish, because there was no ongoing investigation. He was there to issue the results of a quote unquote investigation. So the fact that he didn't take any notes about that conversation doesn't bother me one iota. I found him to be credible about the things that mattered, the activity that he witnessed and the person that did the activity. Whether or not the vehicles passed in front of him 10 times or 20 times doesn't change that a bit. I'm finding Mr. Loeffler guilty of the misdemeanor and responsible of the careless driving civil infraction. Let's talk sentencing. Got your address on Judd Road. That's still a good one, Mr. Loeffler?
Yes, sir.
752-7564, still a good phone number.
Yep.
Thank you. Mr. Day, what should I consider before I sentence?
Your Honor, I believe that Mr. Loeffler has a overall good record. He's a working individual in community. I believe that he's by the nature of the conviction, he's going to get the points placed on his record. I believe that if the court wishes to find him guilty, apply the appropriate fine that the court wishes to do, and aside from any type of any kind of incarceration or all of that, maybe a 6 months probation and nothing further, Your Honor.
All right. Any position from the people, Mr. Young?
No, Your Honor, thank you.
Mr. Loeffler, anything you want me to consider, sir, before I sentence you today?
No, sir.
Where are you working at?
I just opened up a tree service, Loeffler's Property Maintenance.
Good for you.
Thank you.
All right. Good luck with that.
Thank you.
I'm gonna bet there's some storm damage after yesterday.
Yep. I'm staying busy, that's for sure.
All right. On the civil infraction, that one is fines and costs $195. And on the misdemeanor, fines and costs total $400. So the total on the two files, $595. I can set you up with monthly payment plan, or just have you pay it all off within 30 days, whatever is more convenient for you.
Can you do the payment plans with Christmas being right around the corner?
How much per month can you handle?
Say $200 a month, and I'll try to pay it off before then, but I'm just being on the safe
sure
side.
You want to commit to 200?
I mean, I'm not trying to prolong it and drag it on.
Let's do 100, and you can always pay extra.
Okay.
Can you start that on or before January 5th?
Yes, sir.
Any questions, gentlemen?
Is that the only sentence, Your Honor?
That's it. Fines
Okay.
and costs.
Thank you, Your Honor.
Have a good day, gentlemen.
Thank you, Your Honor.
Detective.
Thank you, Your Honor.